Workflows are unique for specific types of analysis and include a collection of tools that have been packaged together and designed to guide users through an entire analysis. You may find you will skip steps within a workflow, or you may only use a certain number of tools within the workflow. That's okay. The workflows are created to provide guidance for specific analysis. However, you can pick and choose the tools most relevant for your comfort level and your analytical needs. This webinar will focus on the customer analysis workflow. Customer analysis answers the question, who are my customers? The steps we will follow today include importing a customer list, reviewing the customer ranking to select an appropriate market, creating a benchmark, mapping customers, both dot map and penetration map, profiling customers using the PRISM 5 segments, ranking variables based on the customer list, creating a demographic report weighted by the customers, and finally, creating a map of key variables. Let's begin by launching the Customer Analysis Workflow tool. The first step is to create a name for our workflow. Step 1 in the customer analysis workflow is to import and geocode your customer file. You can drag and drop your file into the upload window, or click to browse for your file on your network drive or hard drive. Once your customer file is loaded into the upload window, click the Upload button. Envision provides a file preview of the file about to be loaded. As you can see here, this customer file has a unique ID, a postal code field, a city field, a store code, a customer count, and dollars spent. As a reminder, when importing customer data, it is recommended to import the 6-digit postal code as well as the town or city name. This allows a more accurate geocoding and PRISM coding of rural postal codes. We can also import other fields of data if available, like as we see here, the store code, or perhaps a consumption value, like dollars spent or dollars donated, or frequency information, like the number of times attended an event or program. As we can see here, this sample customer data has been rolled up at the postal code level, and a weight column is included. There are 2 customers at postal code KOA1EO. This is important to note to accurately import the customer file. The dataset name will be reflected on the Envision output. Change the name here to be more reflective of your dataset. Adding text in the dataset description window will be helpful in identifying the dataset to other users in your organization, or simply for a reminder of what the data is all about. You can also add tags. Tags will help in searchability for the customer file. You can also decide if this customer file will be used in all workspaces within your Envision license, or if you'd like to keep it organized within this workspace only. You can add a start date and an end date to provide vintage information for your customer file. The next step in the import data process is to specify the geocode settings. As you can see, my file preview has been collapsed, but I can expand it if need be. I have to specify the postal code field, the city field or community name field, and I also have to choose a base. Choosing a base variable for your customer list is important. This selection will be carried through as you run reports and maps for this customer file. If your file has one record for every customer in your database, and there can be more than one customer in a household, then perhaps total population would be an appropriate base. If your customer file is householded, meaning one customer record per household, then total households is an appropriate base. For this example, I'm going to choose total households. A record count or record weight. This refers to how Envision will treat the postal code field. If your data is unit record data, meaning one record for each customer, then record count should be selected. If your customer data has been rolled up at the postal code level, you will want to select record weight. Each postal code will be weighted by the values in the specified field. Since my customer data set has additional fields that I need to import, I can do that at this step. I would like to import the dollars column, and I need to specify that this column is consumption data. I have successfully imported my customer file. A notification on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen notifies me that the file is ready. I can click on View Coding Summary. The coding summary gives me a high-level statistics of the file that was just imported. If I wish to download the geocoded and prism-coded customer records, I click on Download at the top of the screen. Envision allows me to select the geographic levels to append to my customer list, as well as appending the Prism 5 segment code. The customer list has been submitted for download, and the notification will allow me to view the download. The customer list will be downloaded as a CSV file. I will now return to my workflow to continue with my customer analysis project. The second step in the customer analysis workflow is to review the extent of the customers in order to select an appropriate benchmark. Knowing that my file is from all of Ontario, I will select Ontario as my area of interest. I would like to see which cities have the highest concentration of my customer list. I will select census subdivisions, and I will select the customer list that I just recently imported. The dashboard will be ready momentarily. This is a ranking of areas based on the customer list. Currently, the report is sorted on %pen. In order to change the sort, I will use the Gears button located at the top right-hand corner of the visualization. I would like to see the cities with the highest count of customers. I can see that 12.8% of my customers come from the City of Toronto, 7.25% of my customers come from Ottawa, and so on. For the remainder of this analysis, I will focus on the City of Toronto to run my reports. I'll now return back to my workflow to continue with the project. In step 3 of the customer analysis workflow, we provide many different tools for creating benchmarks. You only need to choose one of the tools listed here, the one that is most appropriate for your needs. I will choose to create an area using Standard Geography List. I would like to create an area for the City of Toronto. The census subdivision of Toronto is selected, and I will save my selection. Next step is to get a visual representation of my customers. I can do this by launching the Map Customers tool. I can select an area of interest, in this case the City of Toronto, and I can select my customer file. I will first select to map on Map Count. The geographic levels available are zoom dependent. The closer I zoom in, the more geographic detail I will have. This is a graduated dot map of my customer list. Within the advanced options, I have the ability of changing the colors of the dots, changing the size, and also changing the method of calculation for the size coding. I can also overlay different levels of geography to my map as reference. There are also other reference layers that I may want to apply. Using the button at the top right-hand corner of the screen, I can overlay locations, and also I can overlay different reference geography. There are some other interesting features for my mapping. I can change the base layer. Currently it's set to streets. I could set it to a grayscale, a National Geographic view, or simply set it back to my original street view. I also have a few options when it comes to printing. I can set the settings for my map and print to a PDF. Printing the map to a PDF will place the map in my results for future printing. The dot map was a great way of visualizing where my customers were coming from, but I may also want to see a penetration map. I'm going to go through the same steps as before, selecting my area of interest, selecting my customer list, and I'm also going to select map % penetration. The level of geography for this map, I will use dissemination areas. The thematic map is displaying number of customers divided by total households in the dissemination area. As you can remember, at the beginning when I imported my customer file, I used total households as my base. I can zoom in to find neighborhoods that have a high concentration of my customers. And I can also use the advanced options to pretty my map up. We may also want to look at the dollars spent on the map. If I return to selecting my customer file, I can select not only the customer count, but the dollars spent. And I can map on count or average. My map is now showing an average dollar spent within the dissemination area. And I can print to PDF for future use. The next step in the customer workflow process is to run some reports. The first report I will run is a profile of the customers. I will first run a customer count profile using Toronto as my benchmark. The dashboards, reports, and maps are all being stored within the workflow itself. If I scroll up to the top of the workflow, I will see two different views. I have the workflow view and I have the results view. By clicking the results view, I will see a list of all of the maps, reports, and dashboards that I've created thus far. Let's take a look at our profiles. This is the Prism 5 segment profile of the customer list. I can see a count of customers, a percent composition. In this case, my sample customers within the city of Toronto, I have 139 customers classified as Cosmopolitan Elite, segment 1. They make up 5.59% of my total sample customers in the city of Toronto. We also provide some base counts. We see here 25,330 households are classified as Segment 1 Cosmopolitan Elite in Toronto, and they make up 2.2% of the total households in the city of Toronto. The percent penetration is giving me a calculation of the count of customers divided by the total households in that segment for a percent penetration of 0.55. My index value is calculated by taking the percent composition in my customer file divided by the percent composition in the base file for an index of 252. I'm 2 times more likely to find a Cosmopolitan Elite in my customer file than I am of finding them in Toronto. The Prism 5 segment profile bar chart is made up of 2 visualizations. The table on the left-hand side, which lists out the values and the Prism segments, and the bar chart on the right side. The bar chart bars are reflective of the index value. We have our 100 line down the middle. Any bars on the right-hand side of the 100 line are the over-indexing segments. Anything on the left-hand side are the underrepresented segments. The table and the bar chart are color-coded based on the social group. We have red for urban, orange for suburban, and blue for exurban. Scrolling down the profile, we can also see teal for town and green for rural. I'm going to return to our workflow, our customer analysis workflow, and run some more of the reports. The next report that I can run is a ranking variables for the customer list. I'm going to select the customer database, select my area of interest, which is Toronto, and I'm going to run the sports and leisure section from the Numeris Optics database. The ranking variables using a customer file will rank variables, whether they're demographic variables or survey variables, based on the profile of a customer file. It can help answer questions like, what radio station genres are my customers most likely to listen to? In this case, I used sports and leisure, so we'll be able to see which sports and leisure activities my customers are most likely to participate in. While that dashboard is being created, I will also run a Highlights Demo Stats customer dashboard. Again, selecting Toronto as my benchmark and selecting my customer file, I will create the dashboard to understand the demographics of where my customers are coming from. Scrolling back up to the top, I will select the results view in order to open the dashboards that have been completed. This is a detailed variable ranking for my customer list. I will be able to determine which sports and leisure activities my customers are most likely to participate in. As I can see, I have a large concentration of my customer list that is most likely to attend art galleries, museums, and science centers. There is a high percent composition as well as a high index. I will use this variable later in the process and create a map of neighborhoods that have a high concentration of people interested in art galleries, museums, and science centers. I'd also like to take a look at the demographic report that was run weighted by my customer list. The demographic report provides a map of the area of interest selected for this report and provides you with demographic variables from the DemoStats 2015 dataset. We can see variables like age of household maintainer, size of household, household type, marital status, and age of children at home. We will use the index value of this report to determine if my customers are in areas that have high concentrations of these demographic variables. You'll have to remember that this report, the Highlights Demo Stats Customers report, is a weighted report. It's looking at where your customers are located on the ground and weighting the demographic variables by the number of customers that are found there. To interpret this report, I will use the index value to determine which demographic variables have a high index, showing me that my customers are coming from areas that have a high propensity of age of maintainers under 25 years. The last step in the customer analysis workflow is to map some key variables. Perhaps I'd like to identify areas of high concentration of a specific variable. In my ranking variables for customer report, I had a high concentration of customers interested in art galleries, museums, and science centers. I would like to now map that variable within an area in Toronto to determine which neighborhoods have a high concentration of that variable. I can search for the keyword and select the variable. I can map by count or percent penetration. And I will select dissemination area to create this thematic map. The map provides a view of neighborhoods that have a high concentration of attending art galleries, museums, and science centers. I can zoom in to the areas of interest. I can remove the dissemination area boundaries to make a cleaner map. And I can overlay my customer list for reference of where my customers are coming from. Again, the printing options allow me to print to a PDF for future printing on the printer. I'll return to my results page, my results view of my workflow, to see all of the different maps, reports, and dashboards that have been created for my customer analysis. The customer analysis, as a review, consisted of importing your customer data, reviewing the customer ranking to select an appropriate market, creating a benchmark, creating some maps, dot maps, and penetration maps using the customer count as well as the dollar amount. We also created profiles of our customers. We were also able to determine some variables that our customers are most likely to participate in. And we were also able to see the demographic weighted variables based on where our customers are coming from. Last but not least, we created a variable map to determine which areas have a high concentration of a specific variable. This concludes the customer analysis workflow. As you can see, we were able to produce a number of dashboards and map to understand who our customers are. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial on customer analysis workflow. We do have a number of webinars scheduled for the other workflows available within Envision.